and good morning to the viewers.
Now, Dr. Nzo, the situation is worsening. I mean, out of the 257 municipalities across the country, only 27 received clean audits. Why is the situation allowed to continue like this?
Well, we have to begin in the period of 2009. This is not something new. This has been coming from a very long time. If you remember correctly, when the former late Minister Sicelo Shicega brought to our attention as the public that municipalities in 2009, in their report that was commissioned by the Department of Cooperative Governance, which stated that municipalities were in a dysfunctional state, municipalities were actually facing a financial crisis. This has been coming a long way since 10 years ago. But the problem that we also need to take into consideration is that what was done when this information was brought to us as the public, particularly to the governing parties in the different municipal councils over the past years. And this talks to political leadership. Was there political will to actually change or remedy the situation in municipalities? Did we have enough political leadership? And also taking into account that political leadership requires political oversight in order to ensure that our public accounts committees are functional when it comes to actually taking the necessary steps that we need to take to ensure that these municipalities are performing and the municipal financial management is being adhered to.
As a matter of fact, the Auditor-General Tsakani Maluleke says that, nobody is reporting, nobody is accounting, nobody is sure where the money went to. I mean, as you've just said, this is not something new. It has now degenerated into rhetoric and no heads are rolling, no accountability is being taken. The Northwest Province, for instance, has been on a perpetual downslope despite the intervention of national government and, companies are threatening to disinvest due to bad services costly to them. Clover, for instance, has led the way and indicated that they'll be moving their cheese manufacturing plant to KZN because of the continuous power cuts and water issues. So, what would it take for municipalities to act?
Well, first and foremost, like I said, political leadership is necessary. Are the political leaders who have been elected sitting in the different committees, particularly the public accounts committees in the municipalities, taking any remedial action? Are they actually holding the executive in those municipalities accountable? Are they holding the administration accountable? And if there were financial mismanagement that has been found happening in the different municipalities, are the heads of the heads of the municipal administration actually being taken to account? Like, for example, are the municipal managers and the senior managers actually facing any disciplinary hearings? Are they being suspended for the maladministration that is happening in those municipalities? So those are some of the things that we need to really bring out very closely to our local government system, where consequence management is not being applied in the necessary structures that need to take the whole executive and its administration accountable. And this is affecting the state of our municipalities. So, in other words, we definitely cannot go on like this. Accountability needs to be applied. Heads need to roll. And the public is becoming more and more I'm tired of actually waiting for politicians to finally take those decisions.
And speaking of accountability, and a case in point is the Eastern Cape municipality, which spent COVID-19 funds on a new vehicle for its mayor. I mean, it illustrates the financial ruin and the chaos that engulfs South Africa's municipalities. So who should be held liable for this behavior by municipalities? Should there be collective accountability, or certain individuals should be made, sacrificial lambs?
Of course, it's easy to say that collective accountability should be applied, but at the end of the day, what we need to understand is that municipalities have got processes, procurement processes that need to be followed, which are governed by the Municipal Finance Management Act. And this means that the procurement processes were not followed. It means that the money that was supposed to be spent for COVID-19, for example, has been spent for things that absolutely do not have anything to do with COVID relief activities. So that means that either the municipal administration, the person who actually authorizes the payments that are done should be held accountable. That also means that the politician who had actually received, the car that was bought for them also needs to be taken to account, because at the end of the day, this is a member of council. This is a councillor, and this is a member of the executive. They should have known that, unfortunately, they will be held accountable. So yes, a collective accountability is absolutely important, but again, council needs to exercise its oversight role. The respective portfolio committee needs to exercise its oversight role. So those individuals definitely must be held accountable. In fact, the individual had authorized that expenditure must be suspended by council. It's the only way that the public can actually gain confidence in seeing that municipalities are holding their political representative to task.
And then there's the issue of the violation of the Public Finances Management Act. For example, the Public Protector's Office found the Eastern Cape Scooters contract as improper. And the case is also with the ICU. There's also Parliament's oversight committees and SCOPA, yet there's no clear outcome.
Yes, unfortunately, that issue is related to the Provincial Department of Health, which of course becomes a provincial legislative matter. But of course, it also talks to issues about consequence management. It also talks to issues about prosecutions which are taking longer to be concluded, and also even the investigations, because that matter is also under investigations. So these structures also need to understand that as much as we are waiting for processes to unfold, but at the same time, these processes, the longer they take, the more the public confidence drops. And obviously, it does affect our local government outcomes, because at the end of the day, the public does not differentiate provincial, national matters from local government. Immediately when the electorate goes into the voting stations in October, they will be viewing it as a public matter that affects all spheres of government, including the local issues that are behedged by corruption, the general corruption that is happening around the country. So political parties definitely will have to work hard, especially the governing party, in order to get the public to finally get the confidence behind the governing party. So yes, it does speak to the general public confidence when it comes to the elections.
But Dr. Nzo, would you attribute the bad audits to mismanagement, to political infighting within councils, for instance, or simply that municipalities fail to recover what's owed to them, such as rates, levies, electricity and water tariffs? Because we know that revenue not collected and creditors not paid, then the municipalities remain in deficit.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you do not have your control systems in place, then it means that the recovery rate in a municipality will definitely be very, very low. But on the other hand, we also need to think about the poverty, the escalating poverty issues that we are faced with in our communities. We are in an austerity when it comes to the South African public spending. We also have, the economy that is actually declining. So therefore, the poverty levels are increasing, and people are expected to pay for their municipal bills, and yet they do not have any jobs. So that is one thing that we also need to think about, the pockets of poverty that exist in our country, which actually talk to the inability of our municipalities to draw investments into our municipalities, to grow the economy in our municipalities. But on the other hand, taking into account that we have got a fiscal deficit, the equitable share for municipalities is continuing to drop. It means that municipalities should actually be on their toes when it comes to scrutiny in the way in which public funds are being spent. So these balancing acts needs to be taken into consideration. But if we continue to have a governance system that is also behedged by political factions, by coalitions, for example, in metropolitan areas that are non-functional coalition governments that are actually driven by the interests of political parties and the individuals, rather than the local representative democracy of the electorate, of their constituencies. Therefore, it means that the interests of the citizens are not being placed at the forefront. We just continue to see political leaders and their representatives in council fighting over access to resources rather than actually fighting for the rights and access to services for their constituencies. So yes, indeed, internal factions of political parties play a role, and also the ongoing battles in between the coalition parties, especially in the metropolitan areas, are contributing towards the failure of our government. And, you know, we don't need to go that far. The city of Johannesburg, its performance is slowly but surely declining. Nelson Mandela Metropolitan Bay, it's also not performing. So you can see that political stability is also important in order to exercise oversight over the executive in these different municipalities.
But if the government fails to deal with corruption at the national level, what hope then do we have at the local level?
That's a very interesting perspective, because examples need to be set from national level, and they should be cascaded down to provincial and local government. So if there is no decisive action taken by government, therefore it means that all the other structures below national government will also not take the anti-corruption agenda seriously. But again, we can see that President Ramaphosa is really trying. For example, just last week, the Minister of Health was actually put on suspension as well, because the public was actually waiting to see whether the president will take any action. But it's not just only the former Minister of Health. It's also other ministers. It's also issues related to state-owned enterprises, the evidence that is coming out in the Zondo Commission. We are slowly seeing some action being taken by the prosecution authorities and the Hawks when they go and seize the properties of those who had been already being charged for criminal acts. But the same type of urgency that we are seeing starting to emerge at national level, we need to see it at provincial level. We also need to see it happening at local government level. And right now, it has been very quiet when it comes to the actual processes of prosecution and recourse, legal recourse being taken against those who have been found to be on the other side of the law. So in order for us to really take local government serious, we also need to see the very same attention being given to anti-corruption at local government, particularly by those who have the authority to execute suspensions and legal recourse.
True. And I'm actually glad that you raised that point, because interestingly, Tsakani Maluleke came at a time where the AG's office has been empowered and emboldened to act. And on Tuesday, she briefed both the SCOPA and the Standing Committee on the Auditor-General. Do you hope that this committee, which is meant to support the AG, will be bold enough to use its powers to be able to change this picture?
We do hope that it will be bold enough to do that, because in the past, the Municipal Public Accounts Committee used to be a standing committee of council, unlike the other Section 79 committees that you had, the portfolio committees that you had, that were established as full-time committees with full-time chairpersons. The MPAC used to operate like an ad hoc committee in Parliament. It did not have any support structures. It did not have the necessary capacity. So with the establishment of MPAC, it will enable MPAC to have these necessary support structures in order to execute its mandate, and also have this relationship that it needs to have with the Auditor-General, particularly on preemptive measures that need to be taken by these committees. Because one of the things that we need to take into consideration is that if we are going to wait for the audit outcome in order to come and reveal some of the mismanagement that has been happening in the municipality that is related to finances, it doesn't help when it comes to the recovery, because we know that recovery of these finances, these public finances, is very slow. So it is better for this committee to be more proactive in terms of setting preemptive measures, working along with the audit committee in council in order for us to ensure that our public funds do not end up in the wrong hands or in the wrong pockets.
Dr. Nzo, we have to leave you there, unfortunately, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
That was Dr. Thina Nzo, the head of local government program at the Public Affairs Research Institute, just commenting and reflecting on the Auditor-General's report, which she delivered on Tuesday, painting a very gloomy picture on the state of the country's municipality. I mean, 26 billion rand being racked up by the country's municipalities. All right, it is a minute after 7.